Hello my friends and welcome back to the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel. My name is Adam Hancock if we have not met. And today's video, I'm actually doing part one of a reformatting of the 2023 Best Place to Live in Sarasota, Florida. I haven't covered this topic, I don't think, in totality in like 3 years. So I wanted to redo it, but not the same way. So I broke this up into 3 videos so that it was way more consumable because I am not short-winded by any nature. So it was way too long, but I broke it up in categories so I could go a little deeper. I talk about what is actually special and different to me versus all the other places in Florida in each category. I talk about how to navigate the different ways to live and how I think about that. I even touch on the real estate prices themselves. And at the end of the video, tell you how to get engaged if you want to go any further with our team. So I really hope you enjoy part one of this series, and let's get going. Okay, what I'd like to do first in this video is start off with what exactly is special about this particular category. Differentiators, foundational context to give us a nice lay of the land. So one of my favorite concepts about the Sarasota area is the idea of when you go west, you get everything. By simply going to your right, all the things that Sarasota has historically been known for, the arts and the culture, the Gulf Coast location, world-class beaches, all of that cluster in a pretty low density geographic area. So like for instance, the downtown, our main downtown district where I stand in here today, below me, is our main thoroughfare, right? Our traditional downtown, our main street, the restaurants, the art galleries, and the theaters. But all of this is 3 miles one way to Lido Beach. Longboat Keys above that, Anna Maria Islands above that, 6 miles one way below to Siesta Key Beach, top 10 world beaches. And then all the shopping districts, beyond the new suburban ones. You have downtown, of course, with all of that, and with traditional kind of value. You have St. Armand's Circle, 100 plus shops and boutiques, a cosmopolitan, high-end, John Ringling designed beach shopping district. And then Siesta Key Village and Crescent Village. So you have most of what the town, old school real estate dynamic wise, would value versus some fragile, flimsy, only downtown based perceived value because you have the coast too. So a lot of that creates a pretty easy to navigate real estate market in a general sense because all the value is based on being east, west, north, and south of the main concept of this value. And I think that's really special the more you navigate Florida as a whole. Okay, the second major point I wanted to make in this particular category is the idea that our major downtown area is very much a play first and work second kind of culture, where most downtowns, I would say in the country, or at least a good portion of downtowns in the country, are very much based on economic feasibility. People are hustling into the urban districts because that's where the employers are, that's where the stuff's going on, that's what they need for job and economics reasons. Well, in a town like this where, you could say the goods and the bads about if you're coming here for a job or something like that, but Sarasota isn't necessarily your first choice typically in that realm. But the benefit of our downtown being not based on that is, I think, tenfold, the pace of life here is extremely laid back, extremely lovely. I don't care how many snowbirds are here during season, this downtown never feels clustered to me, not one time, not to park and not to walk. The retail, all the retail establishments here are very much based on hospitality other than a bunch of business being clustered in, where even parts of like Tampa and stuff, like way more businesses than you do actual restaurants. Here we're art galleries every corner and restaurants, and they just do stuff like that because it's not based on those reasons. Even the condos here, the condo living, I would say is very much more about urban convenience and luxury than it is about commute feasibility. Beyond the downtown being unbelievably walkable from end to end, like my other office down to here, and the water's behind us here, very walkable. You're talking like 10-15 minutes to walk the entire downtown, very easy to navigate, all has different kind of layers to it as well. Feels extremely clean and upscale. I would say like those are real takeaways, and I've lived in like probably 9 or 10 total cities in all the major ones, Jacksonville, Miami, and Tampa, and nothing feels this kind of upscale, charming, and laid back to me across the whole country if you had to separate them. So I do think that is special if you're considering remotely living in this district. Okay, now with all of that being said, how do you actually go about navigating living options for this area? This falls into 3 distinct categories in my personal opinion, and that's traditional urban living, that is unique suburban living, which I'll explain more, and that's actually being on the beaches. All right, let me start off with my traditional urban category. So this one is one that I'm kind of self-creating, and I'm going to categorize a few things in here, but it's all stuff that you would generally expect when it comes to living in a downtown. So the first, let's talk downtown itself. So downtown itself, if we park condominiums for a second, you have all the historical stuff, right? So you have like the charming historical districts where you're sacrificing size and age to gain proximity. And we have some really nice ones, you know, just a couple examples. Laurel Park, Burns Court's lovely, you have Towles Court. So there's that side of it where, you know, very much bungalow style kind of stuff. And then we have the condominiums itself. So just literally in like a 3-4 mile square radius here, hundreds of buildings to pick from. So how you decide amongst them and navigate, it's really about the boutique nature, the newness of the resale versus the pre-construction, the fees. The cool thing about here is like boutique versus high-rise. We have an 18-story limit in Sarasota. So the most they can put in one building is about 150. And it's not gonna look like Manhattan, at least currently, because of that height limit, and that's the reason for it. But then you start to get more intricate, and you're gonna say, I like this street better than this street, like Palm Avenue behind me here looks very different than Lemon and Main Street and State Street. So that's usually how you would navigate as you get in depth in your search. Then also on condos, you have a couple more options. So let's say you're not on the beach yet, right? Because we're not doing that yet, but you want more water facing proximity because we hit bay and then we hit Gulf waters. So the three options for that right now are if you go in front of this street here, we'll show on a map too, but the street in front of this building, one street over, it's called Gulfstream. Gulfstream is basically the front of downtown. So you're still in downtown, but you're at the front of it. So because of that, there's only a street in front of you. So you view the bay in a lot of these condominiums. You're at least very close, but you can walk right behind you in downtown. So Gulfstream has a whole row of condominiums, one or two that are newer, but the rest are resale, or like older resales. And then there's two separate areas that are real special. And again, reach out if you want any more information here, because this isn't the kind of video where I'm able to break down everything. I want it more brief and more consumable. The two other water-facing districts are really unique. One's called the Quay, and the Quay is right down the street here. And that's a 14-acre waterfront district that's going to be mixed-use commercial space. It's all brand new. Mixed-use commercial retail condominium living. That's where they built the Beso, a couple Ritz-Carltons over there, the One Park, the new condominiums there, a couple hotels, there's a marina. That's next to the Bay project, 53-acre whole that adds a bunch more stuff. And then you can go a little further, and there's a peninsula called Golden Gate, and obviously surrounded by water on three sides. And that's where you'll see a whole nother bunch of that kind of condominium living. But you could imagine that these are all like on the water. These are all in front of the water. So your best chance to get views and that kind of thing, but still considered downtown adjacent. So that's the main part of the traditional urban living. And then we have a Tamiami Trail. It's a road in the front. And a lot of people base like east and west of the trail. So if you're east of the trail, you're a little further out. You might be a mile from downtown, and if you're west, you're kind of in it more, depending on north to south. So there is a layer of, I would still consider kind of downtown, more downtown than anything, that would be east of the trail, and that would be another area you can navigate for. A lot of times it's for affordability, because being in downtown itself, there's just only so many districts you could live in like a single family home. So that's what I would say about traditional urban. Okay, and on to my second one I'm calling unique suburban living. This is one where I think Sarasota really excels amongst like probably the country as a whole. So we have this one district where I mentioned that Tamiami Trail, which is US 41, which is basically like the coastal version of the interstate. It runs north to south, up and down really far. But we have an area of land that's west of it. So in essence, most of our beaches are barrier islands. So I'm gonna try to articulate this the best. But by being west of US 41, but not on the beach yet, you're the closest strip of mainland available before you fall off into the water. And if you're in the right district north to south, then you have access to literally everything I described on my very first point of going west, you get everything. But you don't just have all of that. You're not sitting in a little condominium because of space. There are full-on neighborhoods here with large single-family homes on existing mature land that are in low-fee environments because the land's old, because it's not like this big master plan area, in high-rated school districts. So you can get literally the best of both worlds that people struggle with, of being like, yeah, I would love to be in downtown or the beaches, but like I can't do that with the family size, and I want a neighborhood, I want it walkable. So this area is very, very unique. And then the big point here is that it's not just being close to the water in Sarasota, it's access to functional water. So there's bridges to get to the beach. If you're close to the water and you're not near the bridge, then it's not that functional to get over there. If you're close to the water and you can't access it for boating or whatever you may do, it's not that functional. So there's a couple neighborhoods where I'll give you some landmarks here as research items or whatever. And again, please reach out if you want any more info. But Cherokee Park, McClellan Park, Bayview, these areas sit literally in this little triangle where on one side you look over to the right and downtown's like maybe a half a mile away at the most. Full-on neighborhoods, wide streets. And then you are in between the South Bridge for Lido Beach and the North Bridge for Siesta Key. So you literally go boom, 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 and you have the best of one of the best places probably to live in the entire country as far as if I'm gonna move here, I want to be in the thick of it. Obviously this comes at a premium, but I wanna be in the thick of it and I don't wanna take any sacrifices when it comes to location or house. Then west of the trail on suburban single family housing, I think is incredibly unique. Okay, my third category, the beaches. So here you really have to separate it because beyond like one beach basically, they're all barrier islands. You're crossing bridges to get there. It's a commitment. Once you're there, you're there. You know, my parents live on Siesta Key, and they're totally beach people because you're not want to run on and off there every day, in my opinion. So I'm just going to kind of riff on the differences between them because we can only build this out so much for this video. I don't want it to get too hairy. So let's start with Siesta Key. Siesta Key sits 6 miles below downtown, like I mentioned. It's about 7 to 8 miles end to end. It's a barrier island that has 2 bridges on and off. Has 3 major beaches on it. You have Siesta Key, which is the main one on the north side of the island. That's next to Siesta Key Shopping Village, which is also the main shopping village. The middle of the island, you have a beach called Crescent Beach. A lot of similar characteristics with the beautiful sand and all that kind of thing, but it's a lot less accessible to the public as far as like parking lots and that kind of thing. So a lot of like condominiums and stuff cluster on there for rental. And then the very bottom of the island is called Turtle Beach. So not quite as nice sand and that kind of thing, but a lot more private, a lot more residential feeling. And so that's kind of how the island is clustered. And then the north side of the island, like above the main beach, is where you're going to find most of your single family homes, most of your neighborhoods. There's more than you think because a lot of the neighborhoods are hard to understand. I have a video I'll try to tag where I broke this down, but they're hard to understand just because like if there's not resale homes available, people don't realize the gravity of how many neighborhoods there actually are. I think there's 43 technically. And then the last section of this video, I'm going to touch on pricing. And then you have a fair amount of condominiums, but they're going to be mostly older. And you do have a lot of the condo hotel kind of stuff like that. But the general consensus of aesthetics of this island and feel, it's going to be much more touristy. So a lot more affordable for single families than some places, but much more touristy as an overall feel. So you got to like that kind of approachable, casual visit tourist environment. Even if you're living on the island, you have to not absolutely hate that because that will be the vibe on Siesta Key. Okay, the second one I want to cover is called Longboat Key, Florida. This is a great juxtaposition versus Siesta Key. So this one sits north of downtown, opposite of Siesta by about 4 or 5 miles. It is a very similar size, actually, north to south. You know, you have 7, 8 miles, I think, total, but a very different feel. It's going to feel way more residential, way more private. They do have public accesses, but not in the same way as Siesta, so it's going to feel a lot less approachable to the public. So it's a little bit more discreet of a place. It feels like a lot more homestead residents and permanent residents reside there. So that's one thing to consider. It's a very skinny island, so the benefit of that, on one side you have bay, the other side you have beach, and it's not that hard to come by because it's not a very wide place, so you turn around and you have water. And you have a mix of hotels and single families like most places. The one thing to think about this is if you get, this one's going to feel a little bit more like a silo because by going north of downtown, the mainland the mainland east of that is now northern Sarasota. That's where the airport's at. That's where it's a more up and coming of an area than going south of downtown. So south of the southern bridge of Siesta Key accesses South Sarasota, Palmer Ranch, way more established kind of places. So the more you get north on above Country Club Shores and the Longboat Key Club area on this island, it's going to be more like a commitment to like, I'm a beach person. It might be a little bit more hairy getting off the island because if you come south, you're going to have to pass through the St. Armand's Circle shopping district. But I would say that's how I'd sum up the difference between these two. This one's going to be a lot less casual, a lot more upscale feeling than most parts of Siesta Key will. Okay, the third major one I wanted to cover just to explain the beaches in general here is called Venice Island, Florida. So after this, I'll cover the rest real quick in a speed round, but Venice Island gives you a good third example. So this one sits 45 minutes south of downtown Sarasota because this is downtown Venice. So this is like our Sarasota's quaint southern neighbor is Venice, Florida, which is a city within Sarasota County, but it is kind of separate. And I'll explain here in a minute. So one differentiator wise, Venice Island is our only non-barrier island. So by not having bridges that divide the beaches like Siesta and Longboat, etc., then this place, if you're anywhere in the vicinity of the island, it feels incredibly more coastal. Two, this is one of the most affordable places to live in the entire state of Florida on the Gulf Coast. And to walk to the beach in both a condominium and a single family home, total cost of ownership. It's one of the most affordable. So it's still kind of underrated in that facet. And three, it gives you just a complete, generally different feel. It's going to be way more like Siesta Key in the casual nature of it. It's going to be historical, it's going to be casual, but it typically is going to feel a lot more quaint, a lot more charming, a lot more laid back, and a little bit of probably average older population overall versus the Siesta kind of crowd that pours in there. And then also they have their 3 own beaches. So, you know, by being on that island, you have Venice Beach that's walkable from pretty much the entire island. You have Casperson Beach, which is a lot of people consider the shark's tooth capital of the world. And then you have Brohard Beach, which is our only dog beach in the entire county. So that gives you a good third example of Siesta versus Longboat versus Venice. Now beyond all of that, I would say you have, of course, you have Anna Maria Island. So these are all kind of offshoots of the conversation we just had. So if you go, Lido's kind of a pass-through beach a little bit. So Lido Key is like on St. Armand Circle. There's single-family districts around it. There's condominiums, but it's a lot more in the thick of it. So I didn't separate it as a category, but that's always an option. It just gets you closer to all the stuff, but it is more minute. But you go Lido, Longboat Key, and then you just go further on this same barrier island, like we'll show here on a map. But the northern tip of that is Anna Maria Island. You know, people fall in love with that. I would say Anna Maria is a combination of more of like Siesta Key plus Venice. It's pastel colors, it's laid back, it's definitely touristy, but it is the northernmost tip of the entire double county. So when you're out there, you are out there. So you want to be looking for that. On the way there, you have onesie twosies in Holmes Beach and Bradenton and Coquina. And then below Venice, you have a similar kind of vein. You have, you know, Englewood. So Englewood, if Siesta's a little busy for you and you're like, Venice is for me, I like the style better, whatever. Then if Venice, whether the price or even Venice is too busy for you, then the junior version of Venice would be Englewood. You have Minnesota Key down there, etc. But once you get the concept of the 3 major players of feel, then you can really have context of a lot of parts of Florida on that same conversation because they all kind of follow this same methodology of premise in general, in my personal opinion. Okay, and lastly, just to add you a little bit more value, I wanted to talk some real estate prices in brevity, just so this all isn't pie in the sky. So downtown Sarasota, which I talked through, in the last 6 months, the median closed sales price was $967,000, so I'll give you that. Both Siesta Key and Longboat Key were $1.1 million as closed price. This includes all types of properties, condominiums and single-family homes. And then Venice Island, you'll see what I mean here. Venice Island, as I digress, was $447,000 in the last 180 days of closed prices. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for this video. I really hope you enjoyed the format. If you did, please consider subscribing and liking if you haven't already done so. Secondly, if my team can assist you at all, any real estate needs, buying, selling, relocating, anything in between, please consider reaching out. We'll put all our contact information here. Anything on this list, any more information, even if you're far out in your search and you'd like help navigating that, I think we have the best in the business and the smartest in the business at doing that particular thing. And finally, the sunshine-state-co.com, doing some reformatting and shuffling there, but my website offers newsletter sign up that's different than most things we do on YouTube, analytical tools that are free, relocation guides that are free, and I'm going to build that out much, much more. So please consider bookmarking that and keeping engaged in that if you're actively searching. More importantly, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.